So how many of you are loving your life right now? Loving your life? Loving your life? How many of you believe that you bring energy to every moment? Right? And you can feel it with other people, right? So part of what helps with that is the power of questions. There are different people in this room that know this and have shared on this. So I want to really focus my talk on appreciative questions. So appreciative inquiry, how many of you have heard of this? Some of you? Okay. Appreciative inquiry is asking questions that are appreciative in nature in order to cause specific outcomes. So when I work with clients, the first thing I ask them is, what do you want? Not what you don't want, but what do you want at its best? So that's an appreciative question, because now I'm thinking about what the best is and what would that look like. So appreciative inquiry helps you to access positive thoughts you have in your mind. How many of you, when you wake up in the morning, you think, I didn't get enough sleep? And then at night, I didn't get enough done, right? Those are examples of non-appreciative thinking. So we want to be asking ourselves things that help us answer different questions. So Einstein said, there are only really two ways to live. And this is a very important piece of information. You can live as though nothing's a miracle or as if everything's a miracle, and have the eyes of looking for the miracles. I wanted to mention Brian Lunt because I watched his video last night, and he's focusing on what's happening in St. Louis and what are the miracles happening in St. Louis. And God knows we need to hear about them, right? So examples of appreciative inquiry are, if I said to you, how are you today, Bob? You might say, fine, terrible, blessed, whatever. But if I said to you, what's the best thing that's happened to you today? That would be a different question, right? Because your brain will want to go into a new groove. And it's amazing how when we ask a question like that, we still want to go into the negative groove. Well, it's better than yesterday, but yesterday was terrible, right? So it's important to understand ways you can ask questions. So let's say you're trying to build teamwork and you're not having good teamwork. You could ask yourself questions like, when have I had a situation that I turned around? When have I had good teamwork? What would it look like if I gained teamwork with this person? Or if you're in any kind of leadership role, you can say, hey, share something with the person next to you that you're proud of. Automatically, you're changing the dynamic in the room, right? We had a school, just to speak on that a little bit, we had a school where the kids were out of control. There was a assembly, and the principal wanted to threaten them that they were going to close down the assembly, the pep rally. And I said, instead, ask the students over the loudspeaker, think of a time where you were super excited and you calmed yourself. How did you do it? And that helped them to look for where they were capable of calming down instead of being threatened into trying to change the behavior. So at meetings, you could be saying, what outcome would you be happiest with? How would you be feeling and what would you be doing? And what's the story? What's the happy story? So in the traditional way that we approach things, we're usually focused on the problem. So let's say that a couple is going to marriage therapy. If they were problem-oriented, maybe the wife would say, he never helps me with chores. How's he feeling about her about now? Positive, right? But if a person was asking appreciative questions, they'd be saying, okay, we know you have problems, but what are the stories of when you were most in love? And tell me about what you were thinking and feeling and what other people were saying about you and saying to you. In problem solving, we always want to know, why is this happening? It's actually less helpful than we think. What's more helpful is, what do we have now that would help bring about positive change? So what is working in your marriage right now? Tell me the stories of what you could build on. Oh, we get along real well with parenting. We're really good with finances. In problem solving, you want to go to fix it, just fix it. So how about we make a schedule of chores? In appreciative inquiry, you're thinking way bigger than that. You're not thinking of the immediate subject problem. You're thinking of what can we use from this situation to just bring things to a level that we've never considered before. In a problem solving, we sort of rush to developing plans. Now, there is a time and place for developing plans, but we rush to it because we're like eager to get out of the problem. But when we're in appreciative inquiry, we're saying, let's reevaluate, what do we want? When I'm working with people, I'll say, what do you want? Then I ask them, is this getting you where you said you wanted? You said you wanted peace. Is this getting you to peace? Because those are ways that people can keep referring back to the what I want. So in traditional problem solving, you think of things as, oh my gosh, this is a problem, I have to figure out how to fix it. But in appreciative inquiry, you say, wow, this is an opportunity for me to understand what is possible and what would bring greater happiness. So one feels like you're digging through dirt, and the other one is, I'm looking for the gold. So you can feel how much more exciting that would be. So when you're saying he never does the chores, you're creating defensiveness, separation, us against them. Not my problem, it's your problem if you don't like how I'm doing the chores, right? It slows everything down because it's sort of digging into this uglier, more negative way of looking at things. So you're going to just start re-churning the past. It really produces people talking about things from a very negative place. That's where a lot of gossip comes. That's where a lot of conversations come about what's not working. So most of you know this from law of attraction, that what we focus on is what we create. And so when we're not asking appreciative questions, we're focusing on what's wrong and what's missing, and so we'll create more of the same. Make sense? So Einstein also said that when we have problems, we can't solve them by using the problem energy. Now, you know how hard that is to get out of sometimes, right? Because when you're in a problem, that's all you're seeing is the problem. So it's important to recognize that that is a useless tactic to come at it from the problem orientation. So this is a story I love to tell about a bowling team. And they took a bowling team and they broke them into halves, 2 groups. And they said, we want this half to watch a video of all their bowling mistakes. And we want this half to watch a video of all their bowling strengths and good moves for a week and to try to improve the game. How many of you think that the team that watched all of their mistakes improved their game? Anybody? Actually, they did, because their intention was to improve their game. But they only improved it by 50 or 30%. The team that watched all of their strengths, they doubled their scores. So, and who had the more fun time, right? Probably the group talking about how, look at you go, wow, that was awesome, right? So that's why, you know, we have this archaic idea that doesn't matter how we approach a problem, but it seriously does. So mind over matter, we hear about mind over matter, but we don't always know what that means. So even a simple thing like going out to your garden. If you had a garden and you hadn't weeded it in a while, and you looked out and you're like, man, it is full of weeds. What a bummer, right? But if you looked at it as, wow, look at the beautiful flowers in there. If I just pull these things out of the way, I'm going to get more food to that flower. Oh, if I just give them a little bit of fertilizer, I'm feeding that flower. Now I'm focused on what I'm contributing, not all this drudgery work I have to do. Manifesting. Do you open a space for miracles? I know it's kind of woo-woo sounding, but I'm telling you, I've been practicing Dale's question, appreciative question to the universe. How are you going to do that? I actually won $200 at the casino that I attribute to that process. So try it out. The worst thing that can happen is that you try it out and see what happens. So opening that space, we don't realize how much we're actually closing the space, and that's the important thing. Language is so important. Listen for what you're saying. When my kids were growing up, instead of saying, be good, don't give the babysitter any trouble, I would say, I know you guys are going to have a great time. What are some of the fun things you're going to do, right? That's how language impacts. We use it in medicine. We condition people to believe something will cure them, and it does. We use it, there was a study done where they took all high-achieving students, and they said, this half are your laggers, and these half are your spurters, but don't treat them any different. By the end of the year, the ones tagged as laggers were all suffering in their grades. And they even disbanded the study because it took 2 years to get them back on track. So expectations, how we hold something is super powerful. There's a whole lot that we don't think about how we even speak to ourselves. So you want to ask yourself things like, what looks great about me when I look in the mirror? What am I good at? Those are appreciative questions. And of course, athletes do this in visualization. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump forward to an exercise that I want you to have, because you'll get the exercise regardless of me going over this process with you, which is basically what you see here. Discover, dream, design, and deliver. So I'm going to show you an example of that, but I want you guys to have an experience of it. So I'm going to be having you turn to each other, and you're only going to have about 1.5 minutes with each other, so kind of figure out who your partner is going to be. And you're going to focus on only what's working. Don't get on, if they say something negative, say, oh, so how would that look if it was positive, right? So keep them focused. Probe, ask questions that kind of get the meat off the bone. Listen intently. You're totally setting aside yourself when you're the appreciative interviewer. And you want to follow the script. So here's what the script is. I want you to pick a partner next to you, and I want you to share a story about a recent accomplishment for which you're very proud of yourself. So let's say Cynthia's talking to Bob, and she says, well, I did this wonderful thing this week. You would be saying, how did you feel? What did it look like? What were people saying about you? What was it like for your energy? When I say switch, I want you to switch and do the reverse. Do you guys have that? Do you understand what I'm asking? Okay, so go. Did you guys notice what happened in the room?
We talked.
The energy went up, right? She goes like that, right? How did you feel? Did you feel good? Right, there's something super exciting about being able to tell people things that you're proud of, that you're good for. You will leave this exercise, as short as it was, having more confidence today, because you're going to remember something about yourself that you did not take the time to celebrate, but you celebrated today. So I know this was a little bitty example of it. I think I'm out of time. Do we have time for any questions? Okay, so we have time for questions. Yes?
This is actually a comment, first of all. Sorry.
Oh.
So I've had opportunity to be fairly significantly involved in appreciative inquiry during the past, 10 years or so. And it's an incredibly powerful paradigm, so thank you for doing this. You did it brilliantly. One thing I'd like to offer to the group is that I have actually an exercise around the appreciative interview process. It's about an hour and a half thing that you do with a group that's very, very effective. Similar to yours, but it has a little more detail and process, and I would be happy to share it with a group. And so
Thank you. Awesome.
Totally valuable.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? There's one back there, Andy.
This was an amazing presentation. One of the things that's worked very well in relationship, and I'm on marriage number 5, so I have some experience at this.
What a brave man you are.
Well, I've expanded my learning opportunities, but is just to notice and appreciate the knack of of acknowledging people, the knack of the act is so powerful for people, because we so often catch them doing things wrong as opposed to doing things right.
Yes, exactly. And just as a quick aside about that, we did this with 200 high school students in the city schools around a project where we were trying to increase the amount of kids that stayed in school and graduated. So we brought in 200 adults. The only requirement was that they had to have successfully graduated high school. So we had house painters and teachers' assistants, and we had lawyers and doctors and so on. But the questions the kids asked were, tell me a time as an adult that when you were in high school that you wanted to quit something and you didn't. How did you do that? Who encouraged you? How did you feel when you stayed the course? All these questions. They asked questions like, what what would you envision for me as a city school kid if you could paint the most rosy picture? What would it look like? And tell me the story about what you most value about your education. So this was about a 20, 30-minute interview. By the end of it, almost every adult came up to us and said, we want to get involved in this project. I loved my student. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And it was because the connection was so open-hearted and so positive-oriented. So it is a very powerful tool. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, Bill?
I'm trained in waiting for the So, Judy, what's the relationship between appreciative inquiry and sales, being successful in sales?
I love that question.
Can you connect those dots?
Yes, because it's a little bit, I was thinking a different one of the presentations that Mark was talking about and John was talking about is asking questions about where do you want to go and how can I help you get there? So the more that you're asking appreciative questions, what would your business look like if what problem could we solve for you and what would it look like if that problem was solved? So those are the kinds of things I think would help. In Mark's case, it was, tell me more about yourself so that I can figure out the kinds of people to put you with. And even asking yourself the question, because sometimes we go into a meeting like that and we say, well, I don't know anybody. It's just not true. So if you say appreciative question to helping somebody might be, how many people could I possibly, what's the most people I could envision giving to this person, right? Like Jim broke the ceiling on that for me. He's like, I'm doing at least 8. Like, wow. So he had an appreciative question that said, how many ways can I help? I hope that answers it. Is that it? We good? Okay, thank you.
Good job.